Hi, I'm David Ethington. I'm a lead senior engineer for Paramount, and my day-to-day operations involves securing the infrastructure of Paramount Pictures and all their assets. So I grew up in a small steel mill town in Illinois, and from there I joined the military. And from the military, I began working on military intelligence systems. Midway through my career, I decided to become an officer, and I became an intelligence officer in the Army. From there, I worked in counterintelligence, counterinsurgency, geospatial imagery, things like that. Within a few years, I had moved over, and I became part of the Army Information Systems Management Program. From there, I moved into Army Cyber, and I led a team of red teamers, as well as intelligence analysts, and helped create fusion cells, and basically just trained soldiers and made them better hackers. After that, I'd retired from the Army, and I moved out to Seattle. And that's where I took a job as a senior consultant. And as a senior consultant, I would fly around the country doing penetration tests, hacking into banks and credit unions, and just finding their vulnerabilities and reporting back to them on that. I then became an information systems manager with 3 degrees. And there I managed all their assets. I managed their third-party risk, as well as conducted internal penetration testing, and was responsible for all their defenses. And just about a year ago, I took a role at Paramount Pictures as a senior lead engineer, and that's where I am now. Well, the threats are wide and varied. There's a number of different types of attacks out there. They'll attack the user, they'll attack the infrastructure, they'll attack the web applications. So it's kind of a full-time job just keeping track of all that. Most of the common attacks are things like, of course, like scans, attempts at DDoSs, attempts at account hijacking, attempts at gaining access to things people shouldn't have access to, things like that. So there were a number of different opportunities to get certified. For example, the Security Plus certification, they trained you for that, and they arranged testing for that, as well as CISSP, Project Plus, the CCNA, that Cisco certification for networking and routers, as well as Cisco Security. I've always been interested in security and cybersecurity. I've always been interested in computers and technology. Even as a child, I would take apart transistor radios just to see how they worked. I used to code back in the days of where you were coding with BASIC on a Commodore 64 back in the day, and I just evolved from there. I've always had that curiosity. I've always had that mindset of how does this work? How do these systems work? How are they defended? And how do you exploit them? I've always felt this need, this sort of desire to sort of help protect assets, keep people safe, keep assets safe. Sort of growing up with that whole try to be the good guy and just try to keep people safe. Just something I grew up with, just the way I live my values. I think the thing that surprised me was that a lot of these threats people weren't aware of. People weren't aware of these attack routes. People weren't aware of the ways hackers and other malicious actors could take advantage of weaknesses in the system, take advantage of users, take advantage of end users, and just flaws that you wouldn't normally think of. I think what really comes to mind is when I was taking my CISSP course in the Army, where the instructor said, when you look at what these hackers do and how they operate, it's not so much their technical skill, but how they think around these problems, how they think to exploit these different vectors. And that's something you can't really train. That is something that really surprised me. I moved over to Paramount because I was interested in Paramount and the different opportunities they offered. The wealth of opportunities and the wealth of knowledge that I gained from moving over to Paramount. Paramount has no shortage of absolutely brilliant people. It was a very eye-opening experience, just getting exposed to all these different technologies, exposed to all these different ways of thought. It was a very positive experience. So the role of Paramount is very dynamic. There's never really one day is the same as the other, and that's really what I enjoy the most about Paramount, is there's always something new to do. There's always a new project. There's always some new venture we're looking into. And that was probably the best part about it, is we don't really have a mundane, routine day of work. Everything is always interesting. Everything is new. Every day we get exposed to something new. And every day we're trying something new. I would say the biggest issue with any organization is once you hit a certain size, there's a certain degree of vastness in your infrastructure. So it becomes harder and harder to find problems at scale. So that really is a lot of what we work on, is just finding these problems and how to fix them at scale. Things that you normally wouldn't associate with a smaller business, things that wouldn't be as big of an issue with a smaller business, it tends to scale upward. The way I found out about these problems typically is just through reporting from different applications that we have at the enterprise level. But there's something to be said about also just pulling at threads and just looking for problems on your own, things that maybe the systems won't find, maybe aren't as easily found. And that's really where that manual effort comes into play. I would say the one thing that's really kept me into information security and with Paramount is there's always a new tool. There's always a new technology to learn. There's never a time when you can sort of rest on your laurels and relax and take a breather, because there's always something new to learn. There's always a new technology. There's always a new attack. There's always a new attack surface. It's ongoing. And then for me, it's that, that curiosity and interest in these types of things that keep me going. So I do work with a team, and we all do different things. We all have different functions. But the important thing is that despite the fact that we're all doing different things, we tend to collaborate a lot. We discuss problems a lot, we discuss issues a lot, we share information across the board, we share it laterally, and we share it horizontally as well. So we're always talking to one another, just seeing what each other's findings, getting recommendations, peer reviewing documents, things like that. Some of the tools we use are very sophisticated, but I won't talk about that. You always think after a certain amount of years working in industry that you know things, and every time you move to a new company, every time you work with a company like Paramount, you realize how little you actually knew, and you're learning things, and just always this influx of knowledge, always this new thing to learn, this new system to learn, this new technology to learn. There's always something. I'm fortunate enough to live here in Seattle, so I can go for runs and walks down by the Puget Sound. That actually helps me clear my head. I can go down there and think about problems and how to solve them. I find a lot of my solutions come when I'm down there looking at the water or just going for a light jog. AI is not going away, and AI can be either a friend or a foe. It all depends on how you use it. It can be a great friend. It can script things, it can handle a lot of mundane tasks, but it's good. It can be a very good ally, it can be a very good tool, and it can also be a very strong adversary. There are already hackers out there creating AI tools for attacking networks. It already exists. This is why we're trying to get into penetration testing and ethical hacking. I would say the biggest trait you could possibly have is being curious. Being curious and having that desire to learn. That will supersede any sort of skill set. It's very, very important to have that exploratory mindset to where you want to see how things work. You want to see how things can be manipulated or changed, and that makes you a better defender. Your ability to attack will tend to sort of flavor how you defend things. So I think it's very important to have that mindset.